I'm Jared the Subway Guy, and this is my story.
You remember Jared from Subway? Turns out he's inspired a lot of people.
With the help of Subway and exercise, summer's looking good.
Feeling good and having fun in the sun. Subway's taste is #1.
From America's sweetheart to one of the most hated men in the country, Jared Fogle, or Jared from Subway, is something that hit a little close to home for me at least. See, I am from the same state as Fogle, Indiana. Indiana is a drug-riddled, podunk, ridiculous, middle-of-nowhere state, and to have the likes of Fogle be from here is, well, no great surprise to me. To be honest, I didn't even realize that Fogle was from Indiana until I began digging. Anyway, why are we looking at Fogle today? And, by extension, his associate Russell Taylor. Well, topics such as pedophilia need to be talked about just as much as murder and cults and internet pariahs. Pedophilia is like the dark underbelly of the world, the dark underbelly that people like to joke about. And while it's safe to say that there is almost an oversaturation of pedophile videos on this website, it's still a topic that needs to be in the spotlight nonetheless. Even if you're in the camp that believes we shouldn't be giving attention to things like this because of the nature of it, we still need to talk about it, keep it fresh in the brain so we can actually see something done about it. As I have said in the past, I view pedophilia as a mental disorder. I think that those who genuinely don't act on it, as in they don't touch kids and they don't look at child pornography, need all the help they can get to finally help to cure this awful thing. But if you're an acting pedophile and do those things, you deserve no pity or mercy or what have you. The worst deserves to befall them, and so it goes sometimes. Without further ado, let's have a look at the chaotic fall of Jared from Subway. As I said in the introduction, Jared Fogle is from Indiana, born in Indianapolis on August 23, 1977. He was a graduate of North Central High School as well as Indiana University. He was also apparently raised in a Jewish home and had his bar mitzvah in Israel. Whether he is Jewish or not today, we can't really say. Overall, it is safe to say that Fogle had a relatively normal and stable early life, or at least from what we can see from the outside. See, Jared had become pretty drastically obese due to his severe lack of exercise, as well as from his generally awful eating habits. This is where things start to get interesting for Jared. Because of his increasing obesity, Jared took action. By the late 90s, he topped a weight of 425 pounds. According to NewYorkDailyNews.com, in college, Fogle was eating quarter pounders with cheese, supersized fries, and apple pies. He was drinking 15 to 20 cans of soda a day and snacking on multiple candy bars every day. For dinner, he'd frequent a Chinese restaurant in Bloomington where IU is, and would inhale 3 to 4 plates each time. I mean, overall, he was the walking epitome of the American stereotype that we're all gruesomely obese monsters who don't know how to take care of ourselves. He didn't take action until one day he fell asleep behind the wheel because of his increasingly worsening sleep apnea. In March of 1998, Jared walked into a Subway, and we all know how it goes from here. And if you don't, well, of course I'm going to talk about it. Fogle ordered the same exact thing every single lunch and dinner for about a year. A 6-inch turkey sub for lunch and a foot-long veggie sub for dinner, bar mayo and cheese, with a bag of baked chips and a diet soda. Every day. According to NewYorkDailyNews.com again, he never once got sick of Subway. That alone is kinda remarkable. Anyway, after just 3 months, he was down 94 pounds. After the year, he had put off half his entire body weight. By 1999, he weighed 180 pounds. Then, an article was published in his college newspaper by Ryan Coleman, which highlighted Fogle's weight loss and his, quote, Subway diet. Luckily, after some digging, I found the article archived on the Indiana Daily Student's website. It was published April 29, 1999. Around this time is when we get that famous photo of Jared holding up his giant parachute-sized pants that one could easily crawl inside of. This photo became the 1999 version of viral. It didn't take long for Subway to see this, of course, and they flew him to California immediately so he could film a commercial.
Here is Jared Fogle. You may have seen him on the news or a talk show. He was inspired by Subway's great-tasting sandwiches. Jared believes in an active lifestyle, including lots of walking. At the heart of Jared's routine are Subway's sandwiches.
Hey, Jared.
Hey, guys. At Subway, you can choose from 7 sandwiches with 6 grams of fat or less, and they all taste great. Food for thought. Subway, it's the way a sandwich should be.
This program is brought to you by Subway, the way a sandwich should be.
Not long later, Jared was nothing short of a celebrity. He became this poster child of weight loss across America, and because of his weight loss, he filmed over 300 commercials for Subway. Subway saw a 20% increase in their sales, with their sales increasing from $3 billion to $11.5 billion. He was the spokesman for Subway from 2000 to 2015. After Jared skyrocketed to national fame, he appeared in multiple popular properties such as South Park in the episode Jared Has AIDS. He was also supposed to appear in Sharknado 3, however his cameo was cut after his scandal came to light. So what about his scandal? Well, it's actually a little bit more than a scandal. It all started on the morning of Tuesday, July 7, 2015 around 6 a.m. Jared's home was raided by the FBI as part of an investigation into child pornography, and to be honest, it would all continue to go downhill for Jared. Law enforcement arrived at his home around 6:30 and began to remove electronic devices and DVDs from his home throughout the day. When they arrived, his wife and 2 children were home, but they were taken to a separate location. Around noon that day, he left his Zionsville home with his attorney. But let's back up a little bit. Before we can really get into the discussion of Jared Fogle, we need to have a look at his associate, Russell Taylor, who was arrested that April. Obviously, Taylor was arrested in a child pornography case, or we honestly wouldn't be talking about him. Taylor was a close friend and associate of Fogle, who was also the director of the Fogle Foundation. Because of a raid of his home, 500 images and videos of child pornography were uncovered. The raid came after a certain Jane Doe approached the Indiana State Police and tipped them off to how Taylor offered to send her images and videos of young girls via text message. Indiana State Police Master Trooper Patrick Etter said this, quote, Russell Taylor made this offer during a series of text messages that included discussions of sexual matters, including bestiality and sadistic or masochistic abuse, end quote. Luckily, the Jane Doe, who was friends with Taylor and his wife, kept the text messages for posterity, which was obviously extremely damning to Taylor. Quote, in one of those text messages, according to Jane Doe, Russell Taylor asked her if he and another adult female she identified could come to Jane Doe's residence and engage in an act of bestiality. The woman did not agree to that request, but told investigators you could tell Taylor was serious. She also told investigators that she received an image file via text from Russell Taylor that depicted another act of bestiality. End quote. Ironically for Taylor, the raid wasn't initially launched to search for child pornography. It was meant to locate bestiality, but investigators found the earlier mentioned child pornography and no traces of bestiality at all. Hidden cameras inside clocks were found, which were used to tape the children. There were girls between the ages of 11 and 16, as well as a young boy. He was overall sentenced to 27 years in prison for the possession and production of child pornography, which was more than the 15 to 25 years that he and his attorney had requested. To help get a feel for Taylor's sentencing, I want to read a short article to you from the Indy Star, which is a news site and newspaper in Indianapolis. Russell Taylor begged the judge Thursday not to let him, quote, rot in a landfill of lost souls. After his tearful plea, federal judge Tanya Walton Pratt sentenced the child pornographer to 27 years in prison, a sentence that will lock him up until he is at least 65 years old. Taylor is the criminal accomplice of former Subway pitchman Jared Fogle, who was sentenced last month to more than 15 years in prison for his role in the child pornography case that drew international attention. For much of Thursday's hearing, Taylor stood facing Pratt, his hair unkempt, and answering her questions with yes ma'am and no ma'am. He wore a dark green prison jumpsuit. Shackles restrained his hands and feet. From behind, the chains around Taylor's waist were visible to his mother, father, stepfather, and other family members watching from the audience. The sentence was 8 years less than what prosecutors sought for 12 counts of producing child pornography and 1 count of distributing it, but it was more than the 15 to 23 years that Taylor's attorneys requested. Pratt rejected the defense's argument that Taylor was a pawn of Fogle's, but she gave him some credit, saying his cooperation with authorities means Jared Fogle is off the streets. The hearing was expected to be the end of a high-profile, sordid saga that began with Taylor's arrest in April. Taylor secretly recorded children who were nude or in sexually explicit acts and shared those images with Fogle. Thursday's testimony, however, raised additional questions. Chief among them was the extent to which Taylor's wife was involved and whether 2 other unnamed associates of Taylor and Fogle also might have been involved. One of those associates was affiliated with Fogle's charitable foundation, which Taylor headed. Those allegations surfaced Thursday during questioning of a prosecution witness by Taylor's attorney. The witness, IMPD Detective Darren Odier, declined to discuss that allegation further, citing an ongoing investigation. Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve DeBroda, however, confirmed after the hearing that investigations are ongoing on people beyond Russell Taylor and Jared Fogle. He declined further comment. Taylor previously said his wife, who was not in the courtroom, placed some of the hidden cameras and reviewed video, but for the first time, testimony Thursday revealed there's video evidence showing her helping. Quote, Taylor and his wife are both seen positioning a camera in a way to see this child naked in the bathtub. the judge said, referring to a video of a niece younger than 10. DeBroda had no issue with the judge's sentence, saying her rationale was grounded solidly in Taylor's cooperation. At the end of the day, DeBroda said, "Part of our point here is we want to rescue as many children as possible and hold people accountable for what happened." During the hearing, DeBroda said 12 victims, including relatives of Taylor, are a lot in a child production case. He also noted that Taylor spent 4 years in pursuit of nude images of children in his home. Taylor, DeBroda said, had to be patient, calculating, devious, and motivated. Brad Banks, Taylor's lead attorney, acknowledged that Taylor deserved to spend more time in prison than Fogle. He called Pratt's determination an extremely fair sentence. Knowing that Pratt gave Fogle a longer sentence than prosecutors requested, Banks said, "We had that concern too." But the judge said Taylor didn't deserve a sentence twice as long as Fogle's. Family members waved to Taylor as he was led out of the court. His mother looked on intently, gently patting her chest with one hand. Those family members declined comment after the hearing. The 3-hour, 40-minute hearing was more contentious than Fogle's sentencing hearing, but it was similar in that the defendant made a tearful plea. Taylor said that for 5 years, "I took my eyes off God," and said his return to the Lord led to his guilty plea. His stepfather, a Baptist preacher, looked on, often covering his face with his hands or closing his eyes. "I've been falling asleep in a puddle of tears every night, crying out to God," Taylor said. "I'm begging for mercy for a lenient sentence," Taylor added, saying he wanted to be back with his family while I'm of age and health to be of some service to them. He also said he has been internationally disgraced and wants to use his notoriety to advocate against child pornography. "Please do not leave me to rot in a landfill of lost souls," he pleaded tearfully. Much of Taylor's defense focused on presenting him as a victim of an abusive childhood that led to psychological problems, and in depicting Fogle as a domineering friend and boss. Taylor said he spent much of his life feeling alienated, a guy that's been lonely for a long time. But in Fogle, Taylor said, "I met somebody who was famous and rich, and he wanted to be my friend." Taylor said his desire to maintain that friendship with Fogle, which also provided him a luxurious lifestyle, caused him to make mistakes that harmed victims and shamed his family. A psychologist for the defense said a 7-hour session with Taylor revealed the childhood abuse, including sexual assaults by a neighbor boy and the boy's father. He also said he was beaten by his mother, who sat in the second row of the audience as those details were recounted. There was also testimony about Taylor's father, who was in the courtroom. The psychologist described the father picking up women at bars and bringing them home, where the women sexually assaulted Taylor, who was around 16 at the time. DeBroda, however, attempted to discredit the psychologist's work, saying it relied almost exclusively on Taylor's word and was unworthy of this court. His cross-examination of the psychologist became so intense that Pratt interrupted. "Let's slow down. Take a breath," she said. The psychologist claimed that Taylor remains loyal to Mr. Fogle as somebody who provided for him, protected him. DeBroda later countered by saying Taylor wasn't so loyal in reality, and that helping prosecutors amounted to a stabbing in the heart of Jared Fogle. At Fogle's sentencing, Pratt said there was nothing in Fogle's background to explain his criminal acts. Pratt acknowledged that wasn't the case with Taylor, but also said it was no excuse. The judge said Taylor and Fogle betrayed children they should have been protecting. "The awful reality," she said, "is these defendants knew right from wrong."
We all know that Jared Fogle and Russell Taylor were very good friends, and in fact, Russell Taylor ran the Jarrett Foundation. And the house that you now know you were being recorded in was Russell Taylor's home, correct?
Correct.
How did he seem?
He seemed like a nice person, but as time progressed, it kind of got creepier and creepier.
Describe creepy to me, and what's creepy mean to you?
Like just, it's a weird feeling of something going on, but at the time I didn't fully understand that.
What did the three of you do there during the summer?
We would mainly stay at the house. We didn't go out much. The only time we did leave was to go to the liquor store where Russell took us.
So obviously you couldn't buy liquor. Who was buying the liquor for you?
Russell was buying liquor.
So he was buying liquor and giving it to you?
Yes.
And what were you drinking?
He bought us Smirnoff, beer.
So vodka and beer?
Yes, yes.
Did you guys drink to excess? I mean, did you get drunk?
Yes.
Did you pass out?
We
Not
didn't.
remember what all happened? What went on?
I don't remember all that what happened, but I do remember being very, very intoxicated.
Are you at all concerned of anything that may have happened when you were really drunk? Because you may or may not remember it?
I am a little concerned, but I can only hope that nothing happened. I don't think anything happened.
During the time that you were at this house during the summer, just in the normal course of things, there were times that you disrobed. You took showers.
Yes.
You changed clothes.
Yes.
You used the bathroom facilities.
Yes.
And you now know that what you thought was privacy was not private at all.
Alright, let's get back to it. The raid of Taylor's home and the subsequent discovery of child pornography caused the July 7th raid on Fogle's home. It was found that Fogle was in possession of over 400 images and videos of child pornography, all of which he received from Russell Taylor. He was also later convicted of traveling across state lines to pay minors for sex. The day of the raid, Subway severed all ties with Jared. They made a very short Facebook post about the decision. Quote, "Jared Fogle's actions are inexcusable and do not represent our brand's values. We'd already ended our relationship with Jared." End quote. Apparently it was a mutual agreement between Jared and the brand, but I personally believe otherwise. Fogle's wife, Kate, also filed for a divorce shortly after. According to Kate and the rest of Jared's immediate family, they had no knowledge of Fogle's interest in children. The case for Jared was surprisingly short, as his investigation began in July and he was convicted in November. Depending on who you are and how you view the sentencings of child sex offenders, the outcome of the case is likely to disappoint and will likely even piss you off, as it did me. First, it was found that between 2011 and 2015, Fogle used minors to produce sexually explicit content with the intention of secretly producing child pornography in the form of images and videos. All of the content focused heavily on the genital areas of these children, with other content showing some children engaged in sexual acts, which was honestly, thankfully, not explicitly defined in the court document. All of the content was created in Russell Taylor's home, and they didn't know they were being filmed, as I mentioned earlier. Taylor then sent the content to Fogle, who was aware that the people depicted in the content were minors. The court document explained that a lot of the children were between the ages of 13 and 14. Fogle also was aware that Taylor knew all of these children, and on some occasions would meet them at public social events and even knew their names. Fogle and Taylor would discuss the creation of the child pornography, and Fogle would tell Taylor to continue producing it. Fogle did not have access to all of Taylor's productions, but Taylor would occasionally send Fogle other forms of child pornography that he had received from the internet. The children in these videos were as young as age 6, and all of them were produced outside of the States. While a lot of the pornography provided by Taylor was stored in his home on multiple devices, Fogle would also view a large portion of it on computers and devices that Taylor provided him, as well as on USB drives. Between 2014 and 2015, it was shown that Fogle had shown others the pornography that was stored on said USB. It was also shown that between 2007 and 2015, Fogle would heavily use social media and traveled to engage in sexual acts with children. Between 2010 and 2013, Fogle traveled to New York City to engage in sexual acts with people he knew were minors. In 2012, he paid a 17-year-old to engage in sexual acts. He continued to do this throughout the later part of 2012 and the early part of 2013, and once said in a text message while looking for underage girls to have sex with that he would prefer a 16-year-old, but that the younger they were, the better. It was found that many of his business trips coincided with his paying for sex with minors. Between 2007 and 2013, the court document revealed that he would also contact adult escorts and tell them that he wished he could be having sex with minors, and even told them that he had done so in the past. Here are all of Fogle's counts. Count 1. Distribution and receipt of child pornography and conspiracy to distribute and receive child pornography. Count 2. Travel to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor and attempting to travel to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor. All of this was revealed over the 4-month period. Overall, Fogle was given a relatively light sentence, 15 years in federal prison. If at any point, however, more victims are found, his sentence could increase. But overall, for everything that was found about Fogle, he wasn't giving a heavy enough sentence, in my opinion, and neither was Taylor. Initially, Fogle and his team were seeking 5 years. However, I do partially understand why Fogle's sentencing was somewhat lighter than Taylor's, but I absolutely don't agree with it. As is somewhat common for child sexual predators apparently, Fogle broke down in tears in court and said this about his victims. Quote, "Not a day will go by where I don't think about them and what I did to impact their lives," end quote. He also said he was, quote, "profoundly sorry for what he has done." A federal prosecutor said this, quote, "Fogle has sacrificed absolutely everything he had built, including his family, to engage in sexually explicit conduct with 2 minors. He emboldened a molester and a producer of child pornography. He allowed Taylor to produce child pornography because of his own sexual attractions. He did this even though he actually knew some of the children in Taylor's recordings," end quote. Quote, "It is true Fogle argues that he is at a low risk to recidivate. However, he is more likely to recidivate than others convicted of non-contact child pornography offenses because of his repeated efforts to obtain and use prostituted minors." End quote. Regardless of his sentencing, when he is released, Fogle will be under constant supervision for the rest of his life. He will be subject to constant remote monitoring. He will have no unsupervised time with children. He will be subject to searches of his homes as well as his electronics, and he will have to register as a sex offender. I wouldn't be surprised if he never sees his own children again, and I would also not be surprised if he is in danger of losing his life once released. This is my assumption, of course, based on what I know of the general public's views on child predators. Jared was also initially having a relatively light time in prison. Being a celebrity, he was almost being treated too well compared to other inmates. According to a certain inmate by the name of Steve Nigg, in a letter written to his family, Fogle was viewed as a hero to the other pedophiles in the Colorado prison. He had hired bodyguards, was paying for commissary, and was viewed as a, quote, endangered species by the prison, as were other pedophiles. It all reached a boiling point for Nigg when he pinned Fogle to the ground and began to beat him. Nigg beat him not just because he was arrogant and a pedophile, however. He also beat him because Jared had received the same sentence as him for an arguably much worse crime. Nigg, you see, was sent to prison for selling guns from his deceased father's estate. Because of his past, it was illegal for him to do so. Nigg viewed this as an extreme injustice, which led to the beating. Back in March of 2018, Fogle sought release from prison on the grounds that his guilty plea was based on an illegal conspiracy charge. He claimed the guilty plea was in violation of due process under the US Constitution. He named his prison warden, the sentencing judge, and President Trump as the defendants. As far as I know, this didn't go anywhere. He tried to sue the feds and his attorneys for $57 million as they had tricked him into a guilty plea. He also claimed that the restitution that he was forced to pay to his 14 victims was in violation of wire fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. A legal expert said that this suit had absolutely no chance of succeeding. Alright, so what does this all boil down to? What's my overall opinion? I did my very best to keep my opinion to the end so I could give all of my thoughts in a cohesive manner. I think that Jared Fogle, and by extension Russell Taylor, are genuine, human dogshit. They are both generally awful human beings who have done incredibly horrific things, and they deserve the absolute worst things to befall them. Genuinely. Jared used his fame and notoriety and influence to ultimately take advantage of these children who, obviously, could not consent to what was happening to them, whether it be from the recordings where they didn't even know they were being recorded, to Fogle actually having sexual encounters with them. On the greater scale, Taylor is arguably a million times worse than Fogle because he was the one who not only supplied Jared with his collection of child pornography, but also created a large majority of what he gave to Jared. Taylor used his position at the Jared Fogle Foundation, which was revealed to be a fraudulent corporation by the way, to weasel his way into the situation he found himself in. Jared used his organization, which was initially started to help combat childhood obesity, as well as his position with Subway, to fuel his pedophilic, hebephilic, and ephebephilic desires. In recent times, so many celebrities are being outed as pedophiles. While this is largely a good thing, it is also very scary. If people like Jared Fogle, who was once a household name and America's sweetheart as I mentioned at the very beginning, can be disgusting, horrible pedophiles, it makes you wonder how many celebrities who are as well that are still hiding in the shadows. People like Jared Fogle, R. Kelly, and Woody Allen have been outed and put to the dirt, but who else could be out there doing awful sexual things with children? It is likely that we will never know the full extent of it, but with extremely vocal activists such as Corey Feldman, hopefully more will come to light. But with all of that being said, I have been Adam, and this has been Freakishly Bizarre. Thank you for watching.